Hey everybody, how's it going? Kind of bored today, so I'm just gonna make a quick little mixing video. This just gonna be about how to make how to mix a pop beat. This is something I made just now. Um, so it's pop in the style of, it's kind of like classic pop, Justin Bieber style. Current trends, like as of recording this, this is probably like a Kid Leroy Juice World kind of beat. So that's kind of like the mix we're going for. This is like excluding the whole glitchcore hyper pop thing that's going on. This is just like how I would go about just mixing like a super standard pop beat. So first thing to look at, so these are like just like three little guitar things that my friend JK recorded. He's a producer, so he sent me these today, and then I just added a super simple kind of like whistle sound on top of it, and then pretty standard just 808 sub bass and some trap drums, hi-hat, whatever, clap. So nothing too crazy going on here. So anyway, also I'm sure you've noticed I use Ableton now, just because I'm kind of done with the Logic. Fuck Logic. I still use it for recording though. It's miles better for recording compared to Ableton. Anyway, so first thing you want to do, or at least how I do it. I mean, just keep in mind like you can do like there's so many different ways to mix stuff in just whatever. So this is just how I do it. Keep that in mind. If you're new to mixing, just watch a whole lot of mix videos, talks to other people who mix, and you'll get a better idea over time, and you'll just get better at mixing over time. And also, this is just a beat. Like if this was to be picked up by an actual pop artist, it would be mixed professionally by somebody who is actually really good at mixing, not just some dude like me. But anyway, first thing I do, I always send my melodies to a bus. If you don't know what a bus is, just look that up. But basically, it's just a blank channel strip that all of the audio goes into this before it goes to the master bus. So this is the master bus. This is what everything comes out of. So before that, these four melodies, these are going to go into the melody bus. So I guess I'll just rename that real quick. Melody bus. There you go. So now everything is at 0 dB, everything is just at nothing. So I've like mixed everything down. And so now I'm just going to kind of start mixing up the instrumentals or the melodies, whatever. So a good starting point is like right here. Keep an eye on your master bus, but I just keep it at like -20 something, like whatever. It's not too important, but that's just like a good starting point for me. So keep it at that, and then I'm going to mix up these other guitars and the synth. Okay, so that sounds good. I mean, it really helps too, like when you're making these kinds of pop instrumentals, just to have like a super high quality I mean, listen to these guitars like on its own. It's super. I don't know how he records it. I'm assuming he has like a nice preamp, but it really helps just to have extremely clean sounding instruments in the first place. So anyway, first thing to consider, like a lot of these pop beats are like super high. They have a lot of like high end frequencies, just to make it sound super bright. Like listen to like Katy Perry, that kind of stuff. and like there's a lot of like sparkly things going on. I don't really have many exciters right now. Waves. There's a lot of like companies that make really good high end exciters and low end exciters, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to be using the stock Ableton saturator, which is good enough. And I like this preset a lot, a bit warmer. It's like exactly what it sounds like. This drive right here makes it a little dirty, so I'm just going to pull that down. And then there's this color thing that I like to turn on. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I think it just kind of multiplies like the sine of the frequency. It's very subtle, but it just makes it sound good. It's a lot more poppy. So listen to it before and after. So yeah, it's kind of a dramatic difference. I do have a little reverb going to the melody bus right here, and that's just a stock reverb. I made it a little bit bigger because I like big space reverbs. So I mean, if you want to add reverb, especially for these kinds of beats, I definitely recommend adding all the effects and the reverb inside of the bus. That way it just sounds like it's all coming from a single place instead of different kinds of reverbs, like different sizes. Sometimes, I mean, especially for like trap stuff, like you don't always want it to be sounding like perfect and exact, but for this stuff, that's how I would do it. So there's a bit too much reverb on the electro synth, so I'm just going to pull that down. There we go. So next thing I like to do, I don't have any good like fab EQ or any nice EQs right now, but especially with these pop beats as well, it's obviously meant to have vocals. So this is something that's used a lot in like the live sound world as well as like the studio world. Like there's usually not a lot of stuff that overlaps, but this whole like 1K to 2K area, just by pulling it down just a little bit, it really it's kind of subtle, but I mean there's so much room for clarity for vocals, like when you move down this like 1 to 2K area. So I'm gonna mess around with that for a little bit. All right, I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. That's like a about like 1.1K. And if you're listening on your laptop speakers or something, you probably can't tell a difference, and that's totally cool. But this is just whatever. It's just something I like to do. It's something a lot of people who mix pop music and just mix vocals in general. That's something that a lot of mix engineers do in general, is just straight up they mix vocals over like a wave file, like once the beat is finished or whatever. So that's something I do. Keep in mind if it sound but trust your ears over everything. Like if it sounds bad, just don't do it. Like you don't have to do this. You really don't have to do anything. The even like rolling off the low end, which that's something I forgot to touch about. But if you have some basis of mixing understanding, you probably already know to do this. So I usually start at like 170. And this way, so you don't have any of the bass clashing with the melodies, because it just sounds bad. Like low frequency notes can't go together because of how wide they are compared to higher frequency notes, which can sound good together. So, I mean, you might just straight up have the bass in the melody for the most part, and you might need to just EQ it a little bit. Once again, this is just like a very general approach to mixing a pop beat. So, I don't know. Start at like 170. That's my recommendation. You might need you might want to do it a lot less than that, because you just really only have like a sub bass coming in here, or you might want to do it a lot because the high end melody, the melody is super high end, and it really only needs to like shine around here, and you want a lot of bass and 808 to fill that space. But so for me, I'm just gonna put it back at 170, and I'll mess with it a little bit. So from here, so you can notice on the master bus, because I put that exciter on, it brought it up about 5 dB, and that's fine. Like, I'm just gonna leave it at that for now. You can pull it back down if you want on the bus or on the instruments. But anyway, so we're just gonna go to the 808 now. So this is just super simple 808 pattern, and it's a super clean 808. It's basically, I got this from Guala Beats drum kit. It's basically a Spins 808, just a little bit more distorted. You can see it. Where is it? Sample. Like, you can, it looks a little different than a Spins, but it's a nice clean 808. I use it a lot. And I just realized I didn't tune it, but it's not that far off, so I'm just gonna 1.9. So yeah, that's about right. Just keep it at that. And some people will definitely criticize this, but honestly, I like to cut off low end for all of the bass, especially if I'm making the 808 louder. And this is probably a little bit too much. I'm gonna go down to 25, because I mean, you're still getting plenty of low end even with this cutoff, and you can usually get a cleaner mix with like a louder 808 sound if you cut off as much. Because if you leave all that and you try to make your 808 louder, it makes it so muddy. And like, especially if you're listening to it with subs, like if you have a subwoofer in your studio, assuming it's like balanced with your monitors, it just makes it so much easier to mix low end. But yeah, so there's that. Keep it at about -15. Listen to that. So that sounds good. I'm going to leave it like that, and then we're going to mix the bass. Copy this over. So something you'll notice, I always keep my sub bass just like a little bit quieter than the 808, because like, you want that 808 to hit. Like, you don't want like a super fat like synth bass or whatever, like this Omnisphere sub bass, and then you don't want it to overpower the 808. So it's just barely quieter. All right, so I'm gonna just turn the 808 back on, and I'm gonna mix the drums in. Similar, like the pop music today, it's Like the drums are very similar to trap drums. Keep it like you do want the drums to just sit on top of the melody still, even though this is a pop beat. That's something I've noticed with that kind of like modern trappy pop happy music stuff, whatever. The drums also still sit on top of the melody a little bit. So I'm just going to mix these in. You can use a drum bus if you want, like same as this, but just like you send all the drums to it. I don't really see any benefit to that unless you're mixing actual drums, like real, like you recorded a drummer, or you're doing like a live thing and you have like a VCA or something of the live drums. But for this, I mean, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 channels of drums. They're all very different frequencies. Some of them don't even really need EQ, at least not in my opinion. So I'm just going to mix these and you can listen. Just like a little bit of stereo space with the whatever they're called, the hi-hats. And then I got this little chant effect. This is also like a Guala Beats chant. Okay, so that's a good starting point. One thing you probably noticed me pulling up the gain instead of the volume on some of these drum samples. So what that is called, that's called gain staging. Usually, if you don't know what that is, to be honest, I really wouldn't worry about it. That's something that's more, well, it's totally essential in the live sound world. But for this, basically you want to just do that to achieve like a cleaner sound. Like you don't want to pull it up too much, otherwise it'll be clipping inside of the channel. Before you're at like 0 decibels, it'll clip. But this is a pop beat, so it's gonna be pretty loud. So you're gonna mix this up quite a bit. So you just want to make sure that there's enough gain provided for each sample, each channel, to make sure it can keep up with like the very tiny amount of headroom that this mix will have. So the drums are a bit quieter than I want right now, so I'm just gonna keep mixing them up. That's good enough for now. I am going to cut a little bit of low end out of the clap and the snare here. So we're going to go to audio effects, EQ. So you can see like there's a lot of low end here that straight up like you're not even going to miss it, but it'll just help the mix sound a little cleaner. So that's good enough. Sounds okay. Don't overthink your mixes, to be honest. Just kind of go for it, and you can always come back to your mix. You know, some people like to mix for like a couple hours, and then they take a break for like an hour. They go do some errands, whatever, come back, listen to the mix again, remix it. Mix for a couple hours. To be honest with you, like I don't spend, you know, this is like the longest I'm spending on a mix in like a long time, just because I like, you know, I'm making this video, so I just kind of want to show you what I'm doing. But especially like if you're a producer, you know, just don't overthink your mix. If it's gonna, you know, you want it to sound good and clean or dirty, or you want it to sound however you want it to sound. Like there's no right or wrong for a mix. Even nowadays with pop beats, there's still a lot of different ways. Like you can clip in pop beats, you know, Mike Dean does that, and there's just a lot of stuff going on that you can do. But anyway, like if you're a producer and it gets picked up by somebody big, or even with a decent following, you're gonna track out the stems most likely. Like I have had songs that have gone straight up MP3 downloaded from my YouTube channel to the radio. And that's always like a weird thing, to where like you sign a deal and you know, they don't get any files. Like they're just like, okay, so yep, song's gonna be released later. So that is weird, but that is also very unusual. So, you know, most likely what's going to happen is you're going to be sending them the stems, and like this artist, you know, an engineer, or maybe if they mix it, like it will be mixed. So as long as it sounds good, it really doesn't matter how you mixed it. That's just my opinion. Keep in mind, like EXO Tour Life, that song, that was just straight up TM88 made that shit on like AirPods or, you know, some shit like that. And that was just straight up MP3 to being like one of the biggest songs in the world. Like that beat was not mixed. But anyway, so this is something that like a real audio engineer would probably get fucking mad about. But this is a quick, easy way to do it. If you want to do this right, what you're going to do is you're going to play it. You're going to slowly keep mixing each channel up until you get to the proper headroom. So this is like, to a lot of audio engineer standard, this is like a good headroom, -8. You can do a lot with -8, and you can still make it commercial volume. I think right now the standard is like -12 LUFs or something, for like, at least for like Spotify or something. But to be honest with you, like just seriously, like I know a lot of like people hate this, a lot of old heads hate this, but make your beat, like seriously, make it as loud as you can without any clipping, unless you want the clipping and the distortion. You know, sometimes you want that. As I was mentioning earlier in this video, this is not like the hyperpop kind of style thing where like the clipping is coming in. So I'm not going to have, there's going to be no clipping in this, but I'm still going to make it really loud. And that's something I would recommend doing, because loud music, it still works with its original intention. Like it catches your ear, especially if you're sending these beats out to artists and they're in a studio. Yeah, like obviously the loud beat, especially if it's loud, maybe it starts like immediately into the hook. Like that's gonna catch the artist's attention, and or maybe like an A&R, like if you're sending beats to A&Rs or whatever. But yeah, so make your beat loud as shit, basically. Like do that, and as I mentioned before, like they'll make it a little bit less loud if they're mixing like each stem. Like if you get a deal or something and they're mixing each stem. So just don't worry about it too much and just make it sound loud. That's my advice. But more importantly, just make sure it sounds good. And good can be like however good is up to you. So whatever. So I'm just straight up gonna pull this shit up, like, and I like my headroom to be at about like -3 to -2, which that's pushing it pretty hot. But like I was mentioning earlier, like that's what I want. I just want it to be super loud. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. Okay, so the headroom on this is a little bit hotter than I wanted to, so I think I'm just going to pull the 808 down a little bit. All right, cool. So now we're at -2.5. So that's great. That's what I'm looking for. So now, this is not like a real mastering right here. There's audio engineers who are just mastering engineers, and this is, but I mean, like I was mentioning before, this like master bus method where you just put some effects on it and make it loud. There's so many songs on the radio that's how they've been mastered. Like it kind of sucks, but it's good at the same time. Like, audio engineering is definitely like a dying thing, because I mean, you really don't need that high level skill, like especially with the way like genres are going. Like people like that like the dirty sound of music, like music that's been clipped, music that isn't perfectly timed, music that's lo-fi. Not everybody wants to listen to this kind of stuff, like this super polished, super perfect sounding everything. You know what I mean? So that's something to keep in mind. Anyways, whatever. I have this little mastering tab. I only put a few things on. The first thing I put on is this Waves plugin, and you don't have to use this. In fact, you don't have to put any saturation on your master bus, but I just really like it. This one is like super subtle, sounds super good. It's super punchy. And I straight up just put on this preset, Warm A Mix. Then I hit this fat knob. So I'm going to like toggle it on and off, and you can take a listen. So that is really pushing the headroom, but that's okay, because I'm about to put on a compressor. So this is the stock compressor. I do have like the H comp from Waves and other nice compressors, but straight up, I honestly just like the stock compressors better. Like they're easier, and I barely put on any compression. And I know like a lot of those other, like there's a lot of producers who say like don't use compressors on your master bus, and you know it's totally up to you. I like to use compressors. If you don't like to use compressors, if you're not comfortable using compressors, just don't use it. Like it doesn't matter, you know, like I was saying, it's just all up to how it sounds and how it sounds to you. And you know, just do whatever sounds right. So the first thing, I always put on the soft clipper, just for like extra color. And yeah, I want it 100% on. And you know, I like it's just make it sound good. And I barely kiss it like with the compressor. So I'm going to turn my ratio to 4. It's pretty fast attack and release time. That's just what I like. That's what sounds like, it makes the compressor sound the most like undetectable. So that's what I'm going for. So I'm just going to kind of reduce this. And you'll also notice like the compression will kind of balance out the headroom that we lost from the saturator. So yeah, I mean, so look at that. Like we're already up a couple decibels. So that technically is crushing the audio signal a little bit, but it's not noticeable. Like you don't hear any distortion. It's just color. So cool. We're gonna leave it at that for now. That's good. And then the last thing, you don't need this if you don't have it. Like I know that this is kind of expensive, but go away. So oh god. So yeah, the infamous ozone elements that everybody knows about. This is just kind of like a basic mastering preset that I made. And if you don't have this, like you can just use a stock limiter and kind of copy something like this. Basically put like a ceiling on it and then try to bring up the decibel threshold as much as you can until you notice clipping, and then like pull it back. I'm just going to start at 2. It's already really loud for what it is. I don't recommend using the imager, because keep in mind this images the entire master bus, and you should really be doing all of your imaging and like stereo panning or whatever on each track. Or maybe you can make a bus for that and do something with the bus for your stereo image, because this is going to image the low end. And it's usually, like, at least in my opinion, you definitely want your bass to be a mono, especially an 808. A synth bass is a little different. If it has a little panning, that can sound good, but that's just my preference. Like, I don't like to use this because it's going to pan and give the bass like a stereo image. And most sound systems, most everything, like the subsend is mono. So you usually you definitely want to keep the low end mono. But that's just my opinion. If you use this and it sounds dope, just fucking use it. There's no right or wrong. So this is just kind of like a basic master EQ. You also, I mean, you really don't even need to use this, like, because it could just be fucking up your mix. Like, if you have a good mix, you really don't need to EQ anything. But this one's kind of good for low end, or for high end. Like, it brings up the high end a little bit. This is kind of like that punchy kick area, like in the 400 range, kind of bring that up a little bit, roll off some of the lows. And this is just kind of like for that vocal imaging. So I'm just gonna play around with this and let it play. So that's good enough. Now, so I got this this loudness meter. This thing's free. You can buy a pro version, but for what I use it for, the free is great. Definitely recommend it. So it's going to tell you the LUFs. So, all right. So yeah, perfect. Like, this thing is super loud. This is a lot louder than like most commercial music. And that's what I recommend doing. You don't have to do it, like I was saying earlier, especially if it's clipping. But just to show you, like, you can really push your music to be super loud with, without distorting it. So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go into like arrangement for this beat, just because that's like a whole nother thing. But I mean, yeah, that's really just a good, solid, like, simple way to mix pop beats in 2020. Like a standard pop beat, excluding hyperpop, like I mentioned before. And that's really it. I mean, thanks for watching. I hope that, I hope you like learn some stuff for this. You don't have to use every technique. You don't have to use a compressor. You don't have to use exciters. You don't even have to use any EQ. Like, if you don't want to, you can just, whatever sounds good, then that's the right way to do it. So thanks for watching. I'll be making more videos. Let me know if you guys like this style of video. If you thought this was dumb, whatever, just let me know. Thanks, guys.